why don't we talk about what in the heck is coordinating an adventuring sandbox or an adventuring region? What could that mean? It is baffling. It is awkwardly titled. When has anyone ever done something along these lines? And the answer is it happens. And maybe not all DMs use this technique. This is an awesome way, though, to understand the world that you are presenting better, so you can more accurately make calls on the fly about, well, you know, what season is it, or what's going on? Are there any local festivals? Things along those lines. And it's nothing that's even necessarily too difficult to do here. Actually, ooh, I can even get an extra cell. Yeah, look at that. I can get an extra cell in on the side here. And if you're ready, are you ready for some data entry? Wow! That's right, nothing is more fun than a Saturday night spent doing Dungeons and Dragons prep. Right? Am I right, everyone? Oh, you were over at Amaranth? Was she doing a cosplay stream or something? She certainly knows. She knows her audience well. But welcome to you, Luke. Now, before we get into our spreadsheet, I wanted to give a reminder. Oh, she was doing an ASMR stream? She does that as well, if I recall correctly. There's like a couple core things that she does on her stream. What we're going to be doing is taking a lot of inspiration from what we have built so far this week, and it's all going to be culminated now into a very easy to produce ongoing timeline, right? A way to present the world one little bit at a time. And this, of course, is going to go into our map. Our oldie mappy. OLDEMAPPE. And this was also the product of all of the things that we were just taking one step at a time, right? If any of you were here Wednesday, it's when the process began. Every night, through conversation and a little bit of dedicated work, night after night after night, we've now made a region. We've populated it with sentient and not sentient, or like, you know, not intelligent, I should say, with an intelligent race, and with some, you know, other animals, some custom plants. We've taken some ideas for monsters and we've switched it up to make it localized. We've thought of some very fantastic stuff. This entire area has a history. It has a culture with the natives. And there's even more work. We could spend a whole other week if we really wanted to go and, you know, and to fill in and make that settlement, that frontier settlement of like normal society that exists outside this unique place. We could go and continue to make lists of monsters and plant life and expand the map even further, because it's just indicated there's a glacier, you know, and it's just indicated there's a sea out to the south. There's just so much more that we can do, but we have a lot of excellent starting points, so that for all of you out there who's been along for the ride and has seen what we've done step by step, that these are jumping off points, or jumping on, I guess if you want, depending, for you to consider, well, maybe if I were to take this idea and customize it in my own way, this is how I could go about doing it. And you can take this region and put it into your game world. Or if you like the idea of this kind of, smooth cascading canyon or valley, whether it doesn't matter what else created, it could be artificial, then clip this out and put this in your world. It's absolutely fine to do. Hey, Third Falcon, welcome. Oh, real quick, also, Coffee Cat Comics, you say hi there. Coffee Cat, I believe that we've been seeing some growth here, and I know that you've been hanging out here quite often, and I was wondering, you exist also, I was wondering if you would so kindly allow me to knight you as a moderator on the channel. Coffee Cat, raise your green sword high, my friend. The power is yours. Coffee Cat, you've been hanging out in the channel for a very long time, very regularly. You've shown that you have good humor, you have good judgment. You know the workings of the channel, and that you're consistent in coming by and just presenting yourself in a friendly and open manner. And yes, long may Coffee Cat prosper. And so I definitely as a growing community, not that just because I'm giving a mod to doesn't mean I don't respect other people who've been coming and hanging out as well. But as we continue to grow, I will have need for more leaders, people who are mentors on Discord, people who might be moderators here too. And so, Coffee, I offer this as an honor, and with the responsibility with it too, is especially if a lot of people are going questing, I will need your help in making sure that they get the appropriate experience points for it as well. And to do that, and you can quest yourself as long as you're not giving yourself bad EXP, and not that I'm expecting you will. You can still because our raffles are done with just a detached random number generator. There's no loss of privileges because there's no wait. People don't have to subscribe or even follow or anything along those lines. So you are still you, Coffee Cat. It's just that if someone is coming in here and making a bit of a scene, or if someone needs some help with some experience points in questing, I would need you to step up and help me out in that regard. That way I don't have to break off to the side in order to facilitate that. I raise my drink and joy. Yes, so everyone, can you please spam some emotes for Coffee Cat in celebration of his shiny sword, please? And also the bows humbly. The way, if you go to add points, Coffee Cat, it is exclamation, add points, all one word, space, the person's name. So let's say, because Third Falcon was the first to congratulate here. So 3RDFALCON, you don't need to worry about capitals. And then, in the amount of experience points, in this case, 100. And so Third Falcon just received 100 experience points. And that's how you go about doing it. But Coffee Cat, thank you very much for the help in that regard. For all of you out there, we are a growing community. More people have been stopping by to watch, to converse, to ask questions, to seek mentoring, to step up and be an awesome DM or a player. And I'm very grateful, you know, for all that any of you do to spread this channel through word of mouth, through sharing a link, through sharing a humorous clip, any of that. Every eyeball helps the cause, and I strive to do right by all of you, to provide this entertainment, this inspiration, a platform to make your own talents shine. You know, whether it's economically because you want to sell your art, or if you enjoy just doing some fan work and you want to share with others, to challenge you with our weekly stories, and just get you thinking, and to give you a good break, perhaps, from the humdrum of everyday life. So there we go. My monitor just went wobble, wobble, wobble. Hopefully my camera didn't either. So, by the way, so yes, this is, I guess, another example of what happens in the culmination of years and years. Well, or I mean, years and years in a case of like building up, you know, your reputation as a D&D player, as a DM, or in this case, this is days and days. Although really it's just like hours and hours, because we did a lot of chatting while we were doing this. But if you sat down and really just wanted to pound through this content, you can do this yourself. Look, we used Word. You can use OpenOffice if you want. We were using OpenOffice for the longest time. But you can use OpenOffice. You can use MS Paint. Very simple stuff, and we can get as complex as you'd like. So the concept now. And this is kind of the last step. We have a sandbox, right? The sandbox is going to imply to our players that a world exists around them, that it goes on. Things happen. They can have an effect on it, but there's still everyday lives that people lead. There are weather patterns that occur. There are seasonal events, you know, cultural things that happen. There could be even some sort of migration that takes place. And I want to illustrate to you just how easy it is to keep track of what happens in your world. You know, so as a DM, if we say, okay, so these are going to be our players' actions, we can put this in the first column. Unfortunately, my microphone is like right in front of this. Oh, we're gonna have to word wrap ourselves. I just did an arbitrary number. I'm not expecting to fill every cell tonight. You know what? I should have also put a bold grid here, because it looks like I might be losing some of the fainter lines on camera. So bear with me one more minute while I get R done. There we go. Hopefully that looks a little bit better. The following video games that are open world is that the individual plots don't change unless the player interacts. I like to think many D&D campaigns are worlds where the player doesn't dictate when the world moves. Yeah, and many times, many stories are about reactions to the world and about managing the events that come down the line to the group. Not that you can't step out of that. You certainly may. But the vast majority are reactions, at least to a point. And then the players might be involved enough in the world to start a little bit of a counter current against it, to start being proactive or instituting plots of their own that now other people have to react to and not just them. Third Falcon says, oh, by the way, I found out a fitting name for that gnome sword that I had so much trouble with a while back. What did you settle on the name for that, Third Falcon? The world happens to them, not by them. Yeah, and it's not by them until, you know, who are they in the grand scheme of things until they actually are influential in some way. You know, culturally, economically, magically, physically, whatever. Oh, it's named Victory? It's a pretty straightforward name. It works. And something like, oh, hi cat. Something like that has a, you could put a good story to it as well. Well, it's not cat butt, but, I mean, here's the owner of it. Right over here. Oops. Hey, come here. He's blessing the minis, everyone. You want a box of Monster Menagerie 3 or Dungeon of the Mad Mage? They have good luck now. Oh, thank you. You're so nice. You want to come up and see everyone? Come on. That one's not Nisa. Alright, apparently he just wants to bless boxes right now. Exactly, the Chroma Company are nobodies and have maybe gotten some kind of notice only recently. Yes, there are two. Hey, there he is. There's my beautiful boy. Cat butt. Yep, and Coffee, the momentum, you know, the momentum is going to have to change at some point in time if you all even want it to. You know, there may be a certain point where you all are pushed he's just off, his butt is, it's like dangerously just like off camera pointing at me here, giving me the old pink eye. Yeah, Raichi's a very good cat. Hey, Mr. Plunderloot. There we go. Whoa, he's a 16-pound baby. So fuzzy and full of love. He's also a scaredy cat at times. Yes, something should be happening soon. I'll actually be giving you all some notes to think about here before Tuesday's game. Oh, your lease doesn't allow pets? Aw. Am I good on minis or do I owe any more? Plunderloot, you're good on minis. I need you to tell me what you want me to do with an extra $22 you have. You wanted some extra kobolds and skeletons, and so on Discord, I sent you a list of things that are available that are kobolds or skeletons, and I need you to tell me how you want to spend that budget. So we have a space here for players' actions, and now aside from that, there's a couple other things that we're going to have to consider. For example, we can have weather patterns. Should have also made all these 18 as well. And so hopefully you can read this on your monitors or your mobile devices. Uh-oh, that's a pretty serious threat. All right, everyone, got to go back to work. Third Falcon, thank you so much for stopping by, chatting, congratulating Coffee, and sharing the name of that sword. You know you're always welcome here, Third Falcon. My partner and I are planning on buying the place, and then they would have no say. Ownership is such an exhilarating thing to get into, and I certainly hope you all out there, if you're not currently in a position of ownership, that the sooner you can move into such a thing, the better. In my opinion, I don't begrudge anyone in an apartment. I was in an apartment for a very long time, but once you know, it's like leveling up. You know, once you get into home ownership, or once you people acquire a starter car or the next car up that they need in order to get around better, or you start making these upgrades throughout life in various ways that empower you, that give you more decision making. Then it's just like with D&D. Once you empower your party to be more influential in their world, to take more jobs, to travel more quickly, to get more things done, to rub elbows, to have some economic say in things. That's tremendous empowerment. And so on that quest, Gracie, I very much wish you well. So we have some weather patterns here. We also have cultural events, right? We have native people that live here, and things happen over the course of time, right? Parades and holidays, or planting cycles, or building seasons, and all of that. And you can see that there's a lot of things that we can do here. If there's something that's a major force as well, we could put something like the sea. What does the sea go through over time? There could very well be political shenanigans going on. In fact, you can have this even be its own category. These would be things like, what could we call them? Clandestine events. So our players don't know it, but as DMs, it's on our schedule that, let's say every cell is a week, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks out. The leader of the swamp folk will fall ill. The leader of the swamp folk will die from illness. Now, of course, in between here and here, maybe the players can intervene if they know about it, or if they can somehow find the cure to this illness. And maybe they never meet this person. Maybe they don't ever have the ability to save it. But we know, and we can keep track of time, that there are things that are going to happen, right? As a DM, the Dungeon Master, we are as gods. But more importantly, we are decision makers. And sometimes you got to have those hard decisions to make. And that could affect NPCs. And not even just, in a bad way. We could even put an event here that the frontier guide hired to take the party into the region reveals she's pregnant. Now, that's a lot for this cell, and we can always, merge cells, and we can make more room. And then later on, I mean, so this isn't necessarily a disease. Is this anything that you can cure or fix? But we come down the line, and whether this is weeks, this could be months, If all of a sudden this is months and she reveals this because, you know what, she probably can't hide it that much longer. She could be, 4 or 5 months along, and if we're considering a traditional 9-month cycle. But of course, I don't know. What's the gestation for a dwarf or an elf or a halfling for that matter, a gnome? I don't know. It's your world. Come up with this stuff. But let's say there's not a lot of time left before she reveals that she is in fact pregnant here, and then we know that she's gonna give birth. The Frontier Guide gives birth. And if you want to add a caveat of unless cared after, the natural birth will cause her death. Right? So you have from here to here to perhaps show that there could be complications. Does one of your characters have the medicine skill or some sort of appropriate way of gauging maternity? And so there's time. Or if they don't have those skills, if we're talking months and months of travel and learning and all this, what if someone learns very quickly the medicine skill by interacting with the natives, by treating wounds and other medical conditions and sicknesses and other things that happen, and so maybe they pick up the skill in time that they can savor. And so you can set conditions like that in your timeline as well. And I know that this is morbid. Oh, the person's going to die of sickness. Someone might die of childbirth. Which is, of course, whether it's through sickness or childbirth, these are tragedies, right? The Whisper people don't want to lose one of their own. And, of course, this lady wants to continue to live to be with her kid. But these are ways your party can interact with the world. They're hooks. They're ways that they can interface. Even if it's in a reaction, they can still choose to take that action, which a reaction is. Maybe not mechanically in 5th ed, but... and then step up, because you know what? Now we've just created 4, not 2. We've created 4 instances of gaining some sort of reputation, right? If the party hires her, and we can even color code it and go. So they chose her of the 4 guides that they could have chosen. They went with her. Now they went with her without knowing that she was pregnant. But maybe, she went because she wanted to have one last adventure before motherhood. Maybe she left because she has an abusive partner and said, you know what, I'm better raising this kid outside of that. Maybe she left because she wanted to bring home money. It's a very loving family, but she needed the money to bring home. And so we can go through, and especially in a program like this, we can say, all right, so was this, did they pass on it and it's red? If any of you are colorblind, I highlighted this red, but use whatever color is appropriate for you. Did they have a good interaction with her, but maybe it wasn't something in her favor? So I colored this. So we colored this yellow, and so she's aware of them, and maybe she knows of their reputation, but it's not. It's not green. Green is. If you want, again, use whatever colors you'd like. Green is she knows their reputation, she likes it, and they hired her. So this is a very good outcome. And if you really want, you can even go through and say, like, make it blue or purple or something. Although this kind of sky blue is easier to read. And this was the best circumstances. Like, amazing role play. Like, above and beyond role play. Not just roles, R-O-L-L. I'm talking R-O-L-E. So not only did they choose her, they had amazing role play, probably also some good roles involved in it as well. And so this is like extra karma, or however you want to measure that out. And so, this happens here, and so we'll fill it in like, okay, so they had a good interaction. They chose to hire her. Here, so the Frontier Guide gives birth, and she's cared after, but maybe the care or the decisions leading to that point or something along those lines, she survived, but, she's not going to be able to adventure for a while or something, there's a complication. And so, she's still there, but for whatever reason, they didn't, earn some reputation points, or if you want to quantify it as such. Here, the leader of the swamp folk falls ill. Maybe they just learn of it and they don't actually ever get an audience. So they're aware of it, but also the swamp leader isn't aware that they are showing concern or even deference, that they would want to speak with him or her in this own isolated area. However, maybe they learn about it, and then they come in and say, we heard about this and we want to save your leader. And all of a sudden, through excellent role play and very good interaction, and they save the leader of the swamp people. It was just 10 out of 10, and we have this event that has taken place, and you can grade the events, and if you want to give a weight, some sort of a point system, 0 or even negatives. Maybe red is negative, like they actually sort of botched the experience. So maybe orange is, it's there, but it's not, it's 0, right? It's our 0 value. Then we can go yellow, and that is, and that's 1 point where, okay, I'm aware of you, but I'm not against you. And so I could talk to you, I suppose. Green then could be something like 2 points. Or however you want to weight it. This is your game, and you can, you can code this or not. You can make whatever you'd like going on. The decisions, the interactions, those were just some examples. Drow gestation is pretty long. Is that just specifically with the drow? Figured at some point they'd evolve and just sort of lay eggs. They just lay some drow eggs in kind of like a spider web, and let a drider take care of them as a nanny for a while. Lady Drow have other things to do than be fatigued and aching from being pregnant. They're busy people. Oh, you actually run a drow, a cleric at that. Oh, wow. Then for sure, that extra research, I hope, is bringing your character to life and is really having her shine. Because playing a drow in general, let alone a female drow that has a lot more societal consequences and opportunities, that can be very difficult. Plunder loot, let me know what you'd like in that regard. And if it comes to rounding something, because I think a lot of the things you're looking for were in quantities of like $3, and you had 22 floating. Because I usually throw in a couple extra figures as a thank you, I don't mind rounding up a little bit to cover the, the cost of one of the figures, if you still had some money left over to go into it. So I'll be happy to negotiate with you in that regard. Oh, she's good. Oh, that's right, because you're talking about not Lolth, Elia Stray. Yes. And if I butcher the pronunciation, then let me know. There are good drow. They do exist. So yeah, so we have stuff like clandestine events, or if you want to call it, like DM/story events, you can do that as well. And you could break it down really. Alestre. Okay, thank you. And you can break this down into the minutia of, the the Johnson family. What is the Johnson family doing week to week? Yeah, are they going grocery shopping? Is one of them going to get fired? And suddenly we're playing The Sims. We're playing the Sims D&D version. So, look at this and find, and at least start broadly. Because we can break out sub timetables. You're playing The Sims right now, says O'Sheeps. Are you playing that, the popular thing right now is what, like it's 100 baby challenge? Speaking of things like, of gestation and babies. where you have to have your character make 100 babies before she dies, and they'll have to be from different people or something like that. Now, a couple other things I can probably pull from the illustration. The sea is going to be something major, right? There's a lot of ship traffic, there's tides, there's a ton of wildlife that are coming and going through the process. With that, I also think that our swamp is big enough where, you know, a forest, if it's deciduous, you know, it goes through some regular seasonal changes. And if we want to throw a little wrench in the works and say something works differently, that's fine. But I definitely think the swamp, with its apparently detached islands that kind of just, you know, they're slowly circling the bowl, so to speak. Things are going to happen that are going to be unique here. And it creates an odd dichotomy because the swamp is more dynamic than the forest, which is probably going to have more of a stagnant cycle of events. Obviously, things happen, right? Leaves fall off the trees. They decompose on the ground to, you know, help create soil for the next season. But here, yeah, it's a swamp, but everything is quite literally stirring around and moving. And, you know, an event could be two islands collide. Or an island is thrown out, but, you know, they often will either bounce away or even just float off. In that case, what do? Do you evac everyone who lives there? Or does it get thrown out of the system and the tide pushes it back into the cycle here? And the mountains might not change that much, but a changing mountain of sorts does exist, and that is the glacier, right? We were talking about it last night. The glacier has been growing over time due to maybe natural forces, such as snow and the pressures making ice and constantly pushing it forward. From the people or things that live inside of it. There's this city that exists in the middle of the glacier that we were conceptualizing. Sheeps, you were doing the 100 baby challenge. I'm trying to build a house right now. A mini house, to be specific. I made it to 28 babies with 2 moms. You are, so you are a very prolific reproducer then. The world can use your offspring, Sheeps. Raise them right and send them off to get an edumacation and contribute to the world. It's like I know you, Sheeps. I didn't know you're doing the 100 baby challenge, but man, I guess I'm 2 for 2 right now. Let's see. Sheeps, I sense at some point you're going to have a grilled cheese sandwich and tomato soup. And I don't mean in the, you know, future from today until evermore, but no, I don't think it was reading you. I don't think it was reading you. It was just a random guess. You know, it's The Sims is a popular game. All right, so here's our basic ones, right? And we can always drop in a we can always drop in a column if we need to. You know, if we have some subgenres or however we'd like to go through that. So let's take a look now at. I have another Sims going on with the original character. She's holding competitions for men to fight for her love. She already knows who's going to win, but she makes them fight anyway. That is excellent character inspiration for a D&D character, I think. That sounded a little redundant, but you get what I'm saying. All right, so players' actions. I mean, we're holding this open because we don't know what could occur, but this is a chronicle, right? You know, this is, you know, Dear Diary. On this day, Korgak decided to blah, 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 blah. And then the next day, oh, and you wouldn't believe what Unith did, etc. and so forth. Oh, apparently I was tip-a-tapping a little bit too hard. All right, weather patterns. Let's establish something here. We'll take out players' actions, and we can keep this a blank cell for kind of the transition across. And so we can say that this is we'll say that this is early winter, midwinter, late winter. If you want to have every month and every day of the month, or whatever your own chronology is, you certainly can do that. For our exercise tonight, I'm going to keep it a little more straightforward here. So, early spring, mid-spring, late spring. And this also gives you a little bit, you know what, I'm going to have to move this over. So let's get ye olde bookie up to provide some art and some other things off to the side here. So I can scoot this over, and it's a little bit more central and easier for me to work with. Late spring, early summer, midsummer, late summer, early autumn or fall. Using autumn or fall seems to be a regional thing. Mid-autumn and late autumn. And if you really want, you can put, if this is the year, we could scoot all this down and put, this is, whatever, 523. And then it comes down to 524. And you can see that this can go on and on and on. Now, the reason why I made so many cells like this, because when I make this document available to you all on Discord, when I post all this stuff up, maybe you can just take it and start filling it in yourselves. Have fun with it. So we have some weather patterns. Here's a very good example, I think. Let's look now. We've discussed geology. We've discussed, would it be hydrology? Like the water patterns and water cycles. We know that things like tides exist. We didn't really look at aspects like currents. But take a look at other regions that might be similar to this in our world. In a world where weather exists. What a strange world, huh? If we have a very cold glacier that has wind howling through it and over it, this is probably going to make the region cooler than normal, even during the summer. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to be winter time in the middle of summer. It doesn't have to be. But it'll be cooler. And in an opposite effect, in my region of Ohio, there's a lot of wineries. And the reason for that isn't just because of the really good soil, and the soil's really good because of glacial impact and churning and everything during the Ice Age, but because Lake Erie holds on to the warmth. And so our growing season is a little bit longer and starts a little bit sooner because we have a giant thermal battery right next to us that does affect weather patterns. You may hear things of lake effect snow, and if you haven't, look up what lake effect snow is. For any of you living from about Cleveland over to Buffalo, New York, you should know what lake effect snow is. Yes, Incarnate is a very good one and a recommended one, Nightwolf. I used MS Paint because I was keeping it simple, and we can always translate this into Incarnate. or I have a program called Wonder Draft. Maybe we can play around with Wonder Draft also. Oh yeah, because lake effect snow those are the big fat snowflakes, and they're also fluffy, so you end up getting like a lot more because it's, you know, spaced out. And fog. Hey, Coffee. What happens if we get a bunch of cold air pouring out of the north? And if it's a warmer area, a little bit more to the south, I mean, this could be 5 miles. This could be 500 miles. Still, I mean, a scale to your map is going to help, but I'm thinking conceptually, so I didn't want to just label a scale onto it just straight up. Because you work near the lake. Oh, yeah. Age of Tesla. I'm glad I don't have to deal with anyone with that anymore since moving to Cincinnati. Yeah, the Ohio River, I mean, you've probably noticed that the Ohio River itself might get kind of foggy or steamy during autumn or spring. Pardon, when there's a temperature difference, but you don't get river effect snow. But hey, if you're in Cincinnati, then welcome, fellow Ohioan, Age of Tesla. I'm not wearing a hat, but my hat's off to you. Yeah. Oh yeah, Silent Hill fog. That is a very real thing. So think of this. When would we have this Arctic wind blowing off of the glacier, causing some trouble? If there's also, is this going to put fog out to sea? So there's actually not a lot of fog here. Or maybe there's not a lot of fog in the swamp. Or maybe there is because of all of the decomposition. Maybe this water always stays warm and it doesn't really freeze over like maybe the lake up here, the glacial lake does. And so maybe this gets very steamy, very foggy because you have perpetually warm water that's circling, and you have the cold air blowing down over it. And so this could cause some very thick cloud banks that are kind of like passing through the mushrooms and over them. That can even create a hazard. And we talked about an underdark forest. And so we created this mushroom kind of barrier reef mangrove forest out in the sea that not only desalinates the water as it gets closer to the coast, but imagine all of the fog that would like cling to the inside, making these tunnels and these pathways through these this mushroom mangrove kind of thing even more claustrophobic, even more difficult to navigate. And yet that could be something that could save this area from being raided by others. It makes it unattractive to sailors or explorers, and so maybe it's really only just landlocked. And the only one settlement that we could drop on the map is over here. Because people might not want to climb over the mountains. There could be weird stuff happening, right? There's radiation. There's things that are occurring in our history of the area. And so for weather patterns, let's say that we have... in winter, things are fairly cool. So maybe starting in mid-spring is fog season. And fog actually lasts, it's not just a 1 month or 2 month style event. Starts here, and now by midsummer, everything is pretty well warmed up, so that the fog, it might just be early in the mornings, but it's not fog season. And then we get one last gasp. For whatever reason, we're a DM, we can have anything happen that we want. We can explain whatever we want. And we can always go back and revise it too. But let's say that we get one... this is kind of like a lingering fog as things are waking back up. But maybe because we have this Arctic presence, it's really more of a... Once we start getting cold, it snaps to cold fairly quickly. So we might have fog in mid-autumn, traditionally. But that's it. Late autumn and all throughout winter, it gets so cold because of the glacier and the winds blowing through it. we can look at some other weather patterns. So instead of fog, you know, a lot of places have rainy seasons or dry seasons. You know, so when could we get a rainy season? And is that coming in?
This is a lot of help. Can't wait to see minis are found in this treasure run.
Oh, Nightwolf. Thank you for that. Can't wait to see minis are found in this treasure run. Well, I do have, I think they're just off to the side. Minis have been found. So just let me know. Let me know if you want to adjust the order any, or what you'd like to do regarding the single minis that you're interested in. Or is this not for the single minis? Is this for pulling a box? Okay, so the 15's going towards the singles. I do have Drow and I do have Elithids, Mr. Plunderloot. I have them both. For the minis you're looking for, then, Nightwolf, do you want to take care of the remainder through bits, or do you want to take care of the remainder through a donation, or do you want to modify your? Do you want to modify the pull list to the $15 budget? Let me know what you'd like to do in that regard. So let's look at a rainy season. Rainy seasons are traditionally in the summer, you know, maybe late spring and summer. And this area, with the abundance of water and the abundance of growth, this probably sees a fair amount of rain. We're probably looking at a region that would be like maybe northern England, or even getting up into more of a like Netherlands style with the climate. Now it could be in a temperate zone in the world. But the glacier can affect so many things because it is just so prodigious with its size and its influence. So here, maybe the fog. We have a rainy season. And that's midsummer. And then we get into a rainy season as we are... So late summer is a reprieve. Rainy season. If any of you live in the south, you'll also know that you get things, you know, like thunderstorms or hurricanes. And that's something else to consider.
Here is the rest. My bad, I didn't type the right number, lol.
Oh, it's no problem at all. No, Nightwolf, you're fine. But there needs to be 100 more bits. I sound like I'm nickel and diming you here. But there needs to be 100 more bits to meet the list. But hey, 100 bits is a text-to-speech, so you can put a fun little message on that. Oh, yeah, Bleed Purple gives you 10% more bits. That is true. Tornadoes, yes, there's tornado season, hurricane season. There's other things to think about, too. Does the glacier somehow cause seismic activity? It may never be devastating earthquakes, but maybe every winter...
Water spout season.
And a water spout season. So, yeah, we'll mix them. Oh, you're going into your tornado season? So yeah, that could be something as well. If the glacier expands, maybe it causes some vibrations in the earth as it continues to grow and it rumbles through. So maybe in late winter, we get You know, we'll just call it the rumbles or something. And yeah, hey, pollen season. If some of our plant life is prodigious or allergies could be a thing, because, you know, this is something that's often overlooked. You know, a lot of us don't say, you know, oh yeah, my character needs to, I don't know, use the bathroom while going down the road. You know, it's minutiae, or people might be uncomfortable talking about that stuff. But also, have you ever played a character in Dungeons and Dragons that has allergies? Or have you ever played a character in Dungeons and Dragons that has had a cold? I mean, not like a mythic disease like mummy rot or lycanthropy. Have you ever just caught a cold? Those are things to think about. Avalanche season? Duck season? Wabbit season? So yeah, you're getting an idea for weather patterns. This could be allergens, if you want to just call this, you know, other natural phenomena, or if you want, so like there's generally the rumbles, but here in our DM or story events, we know that there's going to be a very, we could say, a very bad earthquake, not just a tremor. And the glacier, and that could even bleed over, right? That's a DM event, and or so we can copy it over, or we can say that there it splits. And you know what we can say for the glacier? A portion collapses in an avalanche. There we go. Avalanche season. You know, we come over to, you know, if you want to consider some things like waterspouts or hurricanes a sea event and not a weather event, or you can copy them between the two. So if you're just listing down, this depends on your note-taking preferences. But maybe there's not just daily or, you know, tidal events that occur. There could also be various seasons where if we're getting a lot of meltwater that's kind of pushing back out, we come into sort of a high water time where generally we lose some coastline because there's so much water that is pouring off of the glacier and into this area that is kind of, you know, water flows through, but the water's also being held up. I mean, a colander will still have water flow through it eventually, but if you put too much water into a colander, it still has to bleed out, you know, through the holes. And so we can actually come to an area where there is like either a flooding season, or we can say that it's a fresh water, it's like a freshwater flood, as you know, the mushrooms kind of are going, they're up to their caps. And so that could make then for excellent fishing. Maybe that's when it's the best time to go fishing. You know, so here mid-spring, late spring, we're having some fog. And in the sea, this is when we have, let's see, so maybe early spring is fish breeding, fish spawning. And we'll call this the summer swell. And that's when there is much more fresh water here. And it's also making travel, because maybe it floods over some portions of the mushrooms. It submerges them, and it makes sea travel all the better. And you know what that could mean? If it's easier to navigate through there because maybe mushrooms are washed out or water just overrides it. What if in a DM or story event during the summer swell, and that maybe that extends here too, we have a pirate attack. Whether it happens in the PCs or not, there is a group of opportunists that have waited for this event to happen, and they are going to maybe invade the swamp area, because the forest is rather protected, especially from the sea. unless, you know, some pirates want to come up this way and go all the way around, but they might not want to. And so you can even specify and say, pirates attack the swamp. You can look at other things. Oh, I forgot to make a... the swamp is its own kind of major dynamic thing as well. So if we add that in, and we come to... from early spring until mid-autumn, we have... I think you all in the South are familiar with this term. This odd term called mosquitoes. Or if you want to call them bugs, you want to call them sturges. Maybe instead of mosquitoes, you use sturges instead. Because sturges are kind of dire mosquitoes. Or if you just want to say bugs, this could be when the bugs are out in full force. And hey, Gracie, you see how these are bleeding into each other? Yeah, look, we have a harvest season, a planting season, and a cultural fish festival. And so if we have the summer swell, in order to celebrate, we have I don't know, we'll call it Swellfest. Well, you know, it's a weird name. We could change it if we want to, but we have a marker. So our people celebrate that. And then in midsummer, you know, so this like kicks off the fishing season. And so, oh, and actually we're going to need a planting season as well. So we'll call this seed drop. And a harvest season. This is... Picking tide. Yay. Alright. What about a midsummer where water in the swamp decreasing makes animals in the area have to change areas, making hunting more... Oh, and by the way, hunting seasons are things you can think about as well. Migration patterns or cultural hunting of different things. And yeah, and that could be as well. So if we come out to, you know, in the winter, the swamp in the winter is gonna drop. It's gonna either freeze up, and so the islands are gonna be mostly in place, or the water level is just gonna, because there's not as much water flowing through. So water level drops. And we can call early autumn hunting begins. Not everything needs a name.
317 bonus 31. I like to move it, move it.
Gracie, do you want to add another mini to your shipment? Because it'll go out on Monday. You have an opportunity to do so. What would you like to do with all those bits? Can I ask a fairy dragon? I mean, that's kind of rude. I mean, I could taunt it and tease it by, you know, giving it a full moon, but I mean, that'll probably just get me attacked. Come and get it, fairy dragon. You think you're all that? Got your breath weapon right here, rude noise. Just because you're a dragon doesn't make you anything special. So yeah, water level drops. Water level drops. We still aren't into the... We still aren't into things here, so water level drops. What would you like out of the orphanage then? Yes, Tesla. And so that would be probably when the mosquitoes are like in early spring. I mean, so if we don't want to say, we could say drops, and then we can say water level low, and then water level lowest. And then we can then add here, whoops. Come on. Yeah, whatever. Water level normal. Why am I derping on getting this drop to an... Anyway, you get what I'm saying here. And yeah, freezes will occur. Now, if you're making a list like this, don't overburden yourself as a dungeon master. If it's fairly obvious, like Lake Erie freezes over most winters. I mean, there's times where you could probably just walk to Canada if you really wanted to. Or in your case, Tesla, rivers don't freeze necessarily as often or as prodigiously as the lake can, because, you know, moving water is difficult to do. But you know what? There might be time, Tesla, where, yeah, you can walk to Kentucky. Exactly. Yep. You take that big trek across the state line to Kentucky. Oh, you want the fairy dragon? You want the auto? Okay. I think there's some stray bits that we have to reconcile as well. I can work with you on that, Gracie. I don't have the math in my noggin at the moment. You can't. That's right. You give us that sass, oh sheeps. Keep them. I'm cut off though. Nothing more until next month, she says, determined. Next paycheck. I have a Kickstarter pledge coming out. Ooh, what are you kickstarting, Gracie? If you don't mind my asking. 8th grade science teacher always said a man can walk to China if he has the time. Yes. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. The Wallet of Holding. Interesting. Can you put a link to that Kickstarter in chat? I'd love to take a look at that. So we, we have Seed Drop and this Swell Fest, which is a fishing festival. You know, do we want something like a midsummer, something like a, well, it would be more of a late summer, like Obon in Japan. You know, they have a lot of summer festivals, or something like what we celebrate in the States. I mean, it's not really dependent except on the day that it happened, but we have our, we have our Independence Day. Could there be some kind of a Founders Day? And if so, the swamp area was probably founded at a different time than the forest area was. And therefore, we can go into some cultural divergence. Hunting and Swellfest and Seed Drop may exist between both of our areas, our peoples. But we might have that... so let's see, if the nomads fell into the swamp and were not able to be recovered... It was probably sometime when the waters were high, and it was very difficult. But perhaps it was treacherous. So it was probably a late spring or early summer, maybe late spring. That this is when the nomads were lost. Half the nomadic tribe that was chasing this star was lost in the swamp. They thought maybe, if the water level was low. In fact, we might even be able to drop it back a little bit earlier here. If the waters are turning to normal. Yeah, so they probably tried to cross. In late winter, in early spring. So not only is it Seed Drop, this is also, I don't know. We'll just call it Swamp Founding for right now. Then the others continued on from the swamp area because they tried to rescue. They did the best they could, but there was no going back. And then it might have taken them some time. Some of them could have been lost in this giant cavern. Canyon. that existed here, where this meteor kind of rolled and dug out a canyon before coming to rest here. Given the weather patterns and such, if there was heavy fog, especially in the forests, if they're concerned about, this is something we didn't talk about, but because things grow very large here, this could have made for a rough time getting through, because suddenly mice are the size of large dogs, or a pigeon is the size of an ostrich, kind of a thing. So this could have been very good hunting. In fact, this is probably an area where people go to hunt. Because the game is so large, and it's probably mutated in its own unique fashion as well. But it's also dangerous and deadly, and as time moves on and things move and leave or shift, they continue to chase this fallen star. And so now we would come across to maybe something more like in late autumn, after the hunting begins, they're following the game. After leaving the swamp and kind of surviving through summer, but they needed to set down roots and start making an area in which to live. And so in late autumn, we have our forest founding. How thick is the atmosphere, either region or whole world, that a meteor slowed down to a roll? It bounced Tesla. In our thinking, for whatever reasons, our meteor, do a nice playbook style here. So our meteor, boom, had an impact, and that's what created the kind of the spray of mountains and what sunk this land to be a swamp. And then it skipped out and it rolled, gorging out this kind of rippled ditch. Before then kind of coming to stop right here and making an impact, and that's what caused this other kind of like push of mountains outside of it. And yeah, so it had some forward momentum going this way. So it impacted, it rolled, and it came to a stop, kind of pushing up the earth and mountains right here. I'd have thought that there are large things going on here, then the atmosphere would be slightly different than other places just because it has to support the large beings. Not saying that needs to be added, just thinking. These are good thoughts. Yeah. What could be the case? Larger animals are going to need more food, more water. Their bone structures are going to be different. So you might have dire chickens that have 4 legs because they can't get around on 2. It doesn't mean that they've lost flying. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe they also have 4 wings. And now all of a sudden, every chicken, a chicken in every pot means, you're feeding 3 houses instead of just your family. Oh, and Gracie, thank you for sharing that link. Ta-da. Each of the cultures might come together, right? There was a civil war between the two in our random rolls and our thinking and just our world building. And so this could be a newly formed day that at some place, some neutral area, maybe out here, in Forgotten Realms, they have shield meet that takes place in the summer. And so there could be something, out in the open, the area that spans the swamp people and the forest people. There could be a cultural event. So when would be a good time here? Probably just before You know, people want to leave the swamp from the mosquitoes. And if there's something happening in the forest or with the sea or the weather patterns, there's a lot of fog, and a lot of that fog might exist in the forest. So here you might get a little bit of a reprieve. And so, you know, over time there was a truce that was signed at some point, maybe in the winter, and we can put something here of some kind of a day of peace, some sort of armistice day of, you know, if you want to call it a victory day, it was a victory for both. Maybe this is even a Thanksgiving. This is their Thanksgiving, is the day of peace made between the two tribes. So we can even just label it as such. Thanksgiving, end of war. Takes place sometime in late spring. Maybe it was a solid oxygen meteor with parts of it evaporating over time. Tesla? So, oh yeah, so what? Instead of a meteor, it would be a comet, because aren't comets more gaseous? Frozen gases or water? I like the neutral areas in WoW, so my Draenei can hit on all the Blood Elves if they're nearby. So yes, this would be an area where our Draenei can hit on Blood Elves. So they have a Thanksgiving in late spring. And you know what? You know what can happen? In the DM story, remember, any of these can feed into the others back and forth. And if we say, ooh, there's Thanksgiving. During the celebration, the child of an important person gets kidnapped. Gasp. Does nothing ever go right? Well, if you're a DM, it's your job to stir the pot. And so if the PCs are celebrating here, then this could be to pick the scab at the piece. Is there a red herring at work? Is there a ne'er-do-well force? Is it from within the factions, or is this from a meddler from the outside, from the people from I don't know, you can call them fringers or something, people who live just outside their valley or their area here, and who are more interested in war or just something along those lines. But you know what? As a DM, you have this idea prompt in your mind, and you roll with it however you think your party can best enjoy it or adapt to it. Trust in yourself. You dub it Flirtation Day. When they fell ill? Yeah. So if we want to do that, then, you know, so something happened. So maybe the child of the forest, of a forest leader, gets kidnapped, and not that long after, the leader of the swamp folk falls ill. Or if you want the air quotes, you can put that in there as well. And if that's not enough, apparently pirates are scheduled to attack the swamp. And that leads to a complication. And all of this is going to happen regardless if the player characters ever breach this like frontier town boundary. And we're just creating a story in an area that plays out by itself. Step by step. You know, we're going back in time, or we can go forward. We can plot this out so that this year this stuff happens, and a lot of this we can just copy and paste into the next year. But something else happens in the following year. In fact, you know, we go, so the child is kidnapped, and next year, if the child's not returned, then we can say, you know, down the line here, the child is returned. However, it was hypnotized to assassinate the head librarian. Dun dun dun. And this is its own plot hook. This is something that will just play out over time. We are playing The Sims. We are playing as gods. We are playing as creators, as decision makers. And we can find inspiration that goes back in time and forward in time, right? You know, we just went back in time talking about swamp founding. You know, this could have happened 300 years ago for all we know. These could be short-lived people. What if, due to the radiation, what if due to the exposure of the elements of this comet strike or this meteor, you know, they gain this kind of will-o-wisp style body, because we're kind of thinking that they're foggy people, like mist people, but they have these kind of cores like will-o-wisps do. What if it makes it so that their lifespans are maybe 30, 40 years? And so we have, you know, 10 generations have passed since they even became this kind of will-o-wisp people. Let alone, if any records of who they were as nomads, whether they're humanoid or centaurs or whatever, you know, whatever they were before, that the forest people might have some note of, but they lived long before they became, due to the exposure to the region, the magics, the conditions that have occurred.
Balance after is tellit.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Plunder loot, I see the message that you sent. Yep. Got it. I heard radiation and instinctively looked up the magnetosphere of Jupiter. And Tesla, this is very much, this is D&D as well. What have you learned? Can you bring something to the table, a unique aspect to the magnetosphere, or even to whatever gravitational effects or weather patterns that we see? Because there's nothing new under the sun, even if you're closer to it or further away in the solar system. And if we can learn something interesting through science or history of our own, IRL, although who lives in IRL? Whatever. Why don't we incorporate that here? It can turn, you know, average temperate valley that experiences all 4 seasons into something where maybe when it fogs, there's static electricity. So the fog almost has a, you know, you can see like static sparks fly through it. Why not? This is a fantasy world. Can you imagine walking through a fog bank and getting zapped? Or having just your hair on end the whole time and kind of tingly? Jupiter has a super strong magnetic sphere whose radiation was discovered as signals on Earth back in the 1950s. Oh, and by the way, that could lead into interesting, if you want to call it a weather pattern, but this is something like Aurora Borealis. For any of you who live in an area where you're able to see that. I don't see that Diadems is online right now, otherwise I'm sure he could talk about it. So anyway, I hope you get a good idea. Is this a complete list of everything that can happen in this region? Absolutely not. You know, we can nitpick this and we can make an awesome chart of everything that can occur. And as a DM, all we have to do, and so early winter is like a month and a half, or whatever you want your chronology to be. As a DM, every day that passes, we can just go down the line and say, okay, so the PCs are waking up on this day, so pretend this is a particular day, or the events of the week. What's happening around them? Doop, 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 doop. Oh, is there an important NPC? And is there the villain? Is there the villain of the... Whoop, those are both 18s. There we go. Let me scroll over. Right, so not just DM or story events, you can, but if you have, this is a very important NPC. Maybe he or she travels around. goes around in a cart selling, selling jewelry made from the local whatever that they come across. This could just track the movement of ships going in and out of ports. Whether it's, legitimate mercantile or it's pirates, something along those lines. You can track an important NPC. The villain has a plan. And so if the villain's goal is to... he could be a religious zealot seeking the unification of all our whispers, who are these mist folk, these will-o-wisps. All of our whispers back with the fallen star that originally brought them here to worship it, and then the star will take them all up into the heavens once more. So this is going to be a way that the villain wants to try and somehow round up everyone or get everyone. This could be a plot in play to gather their souls. This could be a way to harvest the power of the glacier, as the glacier has been holding the people's souls. If you've been around for the past broadcast, and again, we're coming up with all of this through some random dice rolls and through conversation with each other. So what if the villain wants to break the glacier, harvest the souls, re-infuse the fallen star, and have it ascend back up, and maybe take everyone to another world? Maybe that's what happened here. Or at least that's what the villain believes. And so the villain has the best intentions that might even be correct with the beliefs. But the beliefs don't practice, don't actually take action. It's more just, well, this is what happened, and we revere the fallen star, and we understand that our souls go to the ice to be held. And so maybe they just reserve themselves, well, we'll watch over the star, and maybe one day we'll grow over it and protect it. But this person, he wants to step up, or she wants to step up and take action. That could be our villain's plot. And regardless if the PCs interfere, this villain over time is going to be doing this, right? So if we've already made, the glacier, the portion collapses, and this could very well be the villain begins experiments on the captured souls from the collapse. And then, whatever, experiments finish. Plan implemented. And so we put a date out here, so by the time we're in late autumn and we cycle back around to maybe a year, right? When the glacier is getting ready to go through its thaw again, then we would come down here and the glacier is fractured. In a widespread fashion. In fact, maybe that even explains how we had the glacier act like it hadn't before in this avalanche and whatever. The story is writing itself as we just sit down and think about it, and as we compare notes. So when would something take place? What could motivate someone? And if you take a look to our last tip here, and then we'll go up and take a break. How does a society live? What compels a society? Its culture, its beliefs, its laws. This is one way that you can build your culture or answer those questions in whatever standard or unique fashion that you wish. It's called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Most societies require breathing, food, water, sex, sleep, homeostasis, and excretion. Now, this is why we get into the realm of, ooh, this is weird or foreign. If we start talking about undead, or constructs like Warforged. Or, what makes elves mysterious? They don't really need sleep. They're not like us in that regard. Or if we look at Vulcans, which are kind of space elves in Star Trek, Vulcans have removed the need, I mean, beyond we're doing this for reproduction, but with the exception of Ponfar, they have removed the need for sex. Oh, that's weird. They're not like us. They're so foreign, even though they have all this other stuff. I mean, the food could be different, but we're like, yeah, okay, we get it. You need to eat food. So then what about if our physiological needs are met, we can worry about our safety, security of body, employment, resources, morality, family, health, property. Once these are met, we can really start focusing on feelings of love or belonging, friendship, family, or sexual intimacy. So not just, this is like for purposes, this is what's the meme, consensual missionary position sex for the sole purpose of reproducing. I mean, that's almost like hand holding. How lewd. And so this is a physiological need to pass on the species. The intimacy is more than just that. It's more than the act. And once we have a secure base here, we can focus on measures of esteem, our self-esteem, our confidence, achievement, respect of others, respect by others. If you can't eat, right? Think of folks who are hard up. Right? They're homeless or they don't have access to regular food or water or whatever. Whether they're local to you, there's someone in your neighborhood, or think of, we see commercials for supporting, children in Africa or in other impoverished areas. Do you worry about the respect of other people if you are bloated and covered in flies and dying because you don't have food or clean, a place to sleep, protection from the elements? Can you worry about, so here, self-actualization is the highest point on the pyramid. Can you worry about art if you don't have inspiration from friends and family, of all these other experiences of life? If you don't have food, are you going to spend your time and energy on making a puzzle? Or about not judging people based on a characteristic, a fight or flight, or some sort of other availability heuristic? Of that person is different than me. They must be bad. Can you operate in a lack of prejudice situation if you don't have a lot of these other things? Maybe. Probably not as likely. So you want to build a world, you want to build a society? Look at stuff like this. That villain plan was basically where I was going with this Jupiter stuff. Hey, then Tesla, it must be something in the water. We're on the same level. Bye for now. I might be back, but I have been doing this, not sleeping more than 3 hours thing. Yeah, Gracie, go get some sleep, and I'll make sure to throw a fairy dragon onto your pile. Yeah, close your eyes and think of England. Although I think you're supposed to say that in other circumstances, Tesla. All right, everyone. Let's take a break, shall we? Yes, we shall. Be back soon.